it seems to me that to say what I've just said, which is that I can't know that there's no God, but I think it's the same as fairies, that's a sort of cautious thing to say. I'm not saying there's definitely no God, but the arrogance of a religious person who just knows, not only knows that there's a God, but knows it's this God, it's the Christian God, it's the Trinity, and the Virgin Mary was born of a virgin. I mean, they've got it all written down pat, and they've got absolutely not a shred of evidence for any of it. That's arrogance.
Do you call yourself an atheist?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, I think it means, it could be taken to mean somebody who's absolutely convinced that there is no God. And that would be going too far for me, because I'm not absolutely convinced that there are no fairies. But I put gods in the same category as fairies. There's an infinite number of things that you could say, well, you can't disprove that. But you don't waste your time saying, oh, well, I'm agnostic about fairies, I'm agnostic about unicorns. You say, until somebody comes along with a good persuasive reason to believe in fairies or unicorns, then I'm not going to waste my time believing in them. And that's the sense in which I would call myself an atheist. I'm an agnostic in the same about gods in the same way as I'm agnostic about fairies, which means that for all practical purposes, since I'm also an a-fairyist, I'm an atheist.
Often atheists are accused of being arrogant and sort of overly aggressive.
We're strident. You can't use the word atheist without preceding it with strident. We're always strident. I treasure Julia Sweeney's anecdote, the actress who does a one-woman show called Letting Go of God, I think it is. And she's describing her gradual escape from the Roman Catholicism of her childhood, and she finally did escape, and she called herself an atheist, and this got into the papers. And her mother rang up in a sort of panic and said, well, I don't mind you not believing in God, but an atheist? There is a certain amount of that left over. But as for arrogance, if I could just come back on the arrogance, it seems to me that to say what I've just said, which is that I can't know that there's no God, but I think it's the same as fairies, that's a sort of cautious thing to say. I'm not saying there's definitely no God, but the arrogance of a religious person who just knows, not only knows that there's a God, but knows it's this God, it's the Christian God, it's the Trinity, and the Virgin Mary was born of a virgin. I mean, they've got it all written down pat, and they've got absolutely not a shred of evidence for any of it. That's arrogance. It's the arrogance to say, yes, this is definitely a Trinity. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The Virgin Mary was born of a virgin. Jesus rose on the third day. All that kind of thing they're absolutely convinced of, with no evidence at all. Now, that's arrogance.
When you have a problem, when something, and I just assume since nobody gets a pass, that you've had crises in your life,
yes,
that you've had suffering in your life and pain, what gets you through when you don't have a God or a faith to turn to?
First of all, there's no obligation for anything to get you through. I mean, maybe nothing gets you through, and I wouldn't put myself in that category. But even if I did, that wouldn't be a good reason to believe in God. I had an Australian friend who said he was trying to explain why it is you see so many old people in church, and he said, cramming for the final. And what gets me through? I mean, friends, the good fellowship, the arm round the shoulders, the comfort of real human companionship, the sympathetic look in the eye, the sympathetic smile, the squeeze of the hand. These are all immensely important. These are real, solid, warm human beings, not imaginary friends.
Have you ever felt a transcendent moment in your life?
Frequently, yes. Looking up at the Milky Way, especially in the southern hemisphere, looking down a microscope, looking through a telescope, just simply contemplating the Grand Canyon, the depth of geological time that's displayed before you when you look at masses of geological strata, looking at fossils, transcendent in the sense of the sort of upwelling of emotion that you get when you contemplate vastness of space, vastness of time, vastness of complexity in living things. Yes, transcendent, yes. Supernatural, no.